is the biggest thing that has ever happened to me. I'm going to go out and give it absolutely everything.
Join me live from Oslo when Joss will be fighting it out against the rest of Europe to bring the Eurovision crown back to the UK.
The Eurovision Song Contest 2010, Saturday at 8 on BBC One.
Two schools, a 400-year-old play, and 8 weeks from page to stage.
Turn thee, Benvolio, and look upon thy death.
Teenage love just got harder.
I'm going to need you to work like you've never worked before.
Go back to the top, I want to hear it all again. A play on both your houses. It's complicated, but I'll learn it.
I think nerves is going to get some of them more than we realise.
When Romeo Met Juliet, next Friday at 9 on BBC Two.
This is BBC One in the South. Now the BBC News with Sophie Raworth and Joe Kent at 1 o'clock.
The man charged with the murders of 3 women in Bradford appears in court and tells them his name is the Crossbow Cannibal. 40-year-old Stephen Griffiths is accused of killing the prostitutes who all went missing in the past year. He's been remanded in custody. The next 48 hours are critical. An anxious wait for BP as the oil leak in the Gulf of Mexico slows. David Cameron prepares to give his first major speech as Prime Minister. He'll outline plans to transform the economy. Why it pays to brush your teeth twice a day. New research claims people who don't have a higher chance of developing heart disease. And looking good at Lord's, England's Jonathan Trott completes his double century on day 2 of the first test against Bangladesh.
In the south, the mother of the dead baby dumped in a railway station bin comes forward. We'll have the latest. And it's first in line to become one of the government's new academy schools. But how will that change things?
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. The man accused of murdering 3 women who worked as prostitutes in Bradford has appeared in court. When asked to confirm his name, 40-year-old Stephen Griffiths called himself the Crossbow Cannibal. He's accused of killing Suzanne Blamires, Shelley Armitage and Susan Rushworth. The remains of Suzanne Blamires were found in a river this week. The other 2 women are still missing. Well, Danny Savage is in Bradford now. Danny.
Sophie, in just over an hour's time, Stephen Griffiths will be appearing here at Bradford Crown Court in front of a judge as the investigation into his alleged crimes continues. We have police in this area still carrying out searches, and their main suspect has begun his journey through the courts. Outside Bradford Magistrates Court early this morning, every prison van attracted attention. Photographers looking for an image of an alleged serial killer. In court number 3 this morning, 40-year-old Stephen Griffiths stood to give his personal details. When asked his name, he replied, "The Crossbow Cannibal." And when asked for his address, he looked round the courtroom scratching his head and said, "Here, I guess." About 8 tearful relatives of his alleged victims stared at him intently across the courtroom. They were driven away afterwards by police family liaison officers. Stephen Griffiths is charged with murdering 3 women: Suzanne Blamires, Shelley Armitage and Susan Rushworth. All 3 worked as prostitutes in the city. Outside court, one of Shelley Armitage's friends spoke about her.
No matter what she does or what she don't deserve to get killed at the end of the day, does she? No matter what she's done or what she is, if she's on drugs or not.
A short while later, Stephen Griffiths was driven away from court to travel the short distance across the city before his next appearance this afternoon. Meanwhile, the police investigation continues. They are understood to have recovered all the remains of Suzanne Blamires from the River Aire in Shipley, but the search is likely to continue here as they try and trace the bodies of the other 2 women. And forensic work around Stephen Griffiths' flat close to the city centre is likely to continue for many days. Last night in the red light district, women were still working on the streets. No matter what has happened here, many of them feel they have to do this to feed their drug habits. So Stephen Griffiths naming himself in court there as the crossbow cannibal. The recent events have been described in some of the tabloid papers as the crossbow cannibal killings. Now, in the last few minutes, we've had these pictures in from the BBC News helicopter, which is in the skies above Bradford city centre. It shows Stephen Griffiths' block of flats where he lived, just off Thornton Road, about a quarter of a mile from where I'm standing at the moment. In the backyard there, you can see a forensic tent from the police, which has been put up there as they continue to scrutinise that area. Sniffer dogs have also been operating in that area today. Police going through the area there, trying to find any more clues that could perhaps lead them to the bodies of the other two women, those bodies not yet being recovered, that Stephen Griffiths has been charged with killing. We also understand that more flowers have been left outside Stephen Griffiths' home, flowers left by relatives in tribute to the dead women, because of course their bodies haven't been found yet, so people feel that the only place they can leave those flowers is outside the home of their alleged killer. But he will be back in court within the next hour. Sophie.
Danny, thank you very much. BP's efforts to stop the oil leak into the Gulf of Mexico are at a critical point. The company says the operation is going according to plan, but it will be another 2 days before they can be sure if it has been successful. President Obama is heading to the Gulf Coast in Louisiana today to see the progress being made by BP as they try to halt the biggest oil spill in U.S. history. Our correspondent, Andy Gallagher, is in Louisiana. Now, do we know how close they are to stopping the oil flow?
Well, Sophie, it's just past 7 o'clock in the morning here in Louisiana, and there's already a great deal of confusion. The commander in charge of this entire incident, Thad Allen, saying that that top kill operation has worked, albeit temporarily. BP, however, are being far more cautious.
We will go back to pumping mud later in the day. So the operation's continuing. It's going pretty well according to plan. As everyone appreciates, 5,000 feet of seawater. So we've proven the technology, and we are learning about how to optimize the technology, and we're learning about the condition of the well and what it's going to take to kill the well. It's probably at least another 48 hours away before we could have confidence that we've succeeded. We've said all along that we rated this at 60 to 70%. That has not changed.
So 2 days before we know if it has worked or not, BP have said that this is costing them more than £600 million already. Massive pressure on them. President Obama is appearing again today to put even more pressure on them, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think we'll see a very different President Obama here. Remember, he was here about 2 weeks ago. He's now taken full responsibility for the situation here. His popularity for the handling of the situation has gone down amongst the American public. He's talking about the situation in very personal terms now, saying that if necessary, the American government will take over from BP, saying that they are now well and truly in charge. Meanwhile, the people all throughout this region have changed. Their mood has darkened. Some people even leaving the region now. So I think people will be expecting a great deal from President Obama and a great deal more from British Petroleum.
Andy Gallagher, thank you very much. In Pakistan, 42 people have been killed by gunmen who attacked 2 mosques in the city of Lahore. Reports say the attackers have taken a number of people hostage after storming the buildings during Friday prayers. Pakistani police say they've secured one of the mosques after fierce fighting. Our World Affairs correspondent David Loyne reports.
The wide avenues of the upmarket model town district of Lahore have been turned into a battleground. One of the gunmen holding hundreds of worshippers hostage in a mosque could clearly be seen firing. Police have taken up positions and returned fire here and at another mosque in the city. As the death toll rose, ambulances came as close as they dared.
I was going to the mosque. I was sitting adjacent to the mosque, and suddenly we heard firing. So we just came back because we realized that this is a serious attack, because the firing was indiscriminate. It was automatic rifles. There were grenade blasts, bomb blasts, and I don't know what they have brought.
The gunmen had come prepared to fight to the death, armed with assault rifles and grenades in a city which has been the frequent target of suicide bombers. On the streets, anxiety grew among people who could only imagine what conditions were like for their relatives being held inside mosques where they'd gone for Friday prayers. After a fierce gun battle lasting for 2 hours, police said that they'd now retaken one of the mosques. Both of the mosques that were attacked are run by the Ahmadiyya Muslim sect, a small reform wing of Islam with about 1% of Pakistan's population. Ahmadis have faced increasing persecution in recent years, including laws that discriminate against them. David Loyne, BBC News.
David Cameron is about to make his first major speech as Prime Minister since taking office. He's expected to pledge to repair the economy and reopen Britain for business. He'll be speaking in Shipley in Yorkshire. Our political correspondent Ian Watson is there now. So reopening Britain for business, are we expecting any new information on how he plans to do that?
Now, what we're going to see is his first major speech on the economy as Prime Minister, so it'll be a fairly wide-ranging speech. But he's here at Salts Mill in Shipley, which, of course, when this was built in Victorian times, Britain was a workshop of the world. So what he's going to be doing in terms of the approach that he's going to adopt in Number 10 is to say that, frankly, the British economy's fate is too interwoven with the City of London, and what it needs to do is to get back to manufacturing again. The government's got to do more to build up the manufacturing base. The second message he's got, I think, is also relevant to here. The person who built this, Sir Titus Salt, just across there, also built a village for the workers here. And what David Cameron is going to be saying is that what is necessary now is for the private sector to do far more in terms of regeneration and rebuilding. And outside southern England, the public sector is just too big. Now, I suspect his Labour opponents will be saying he's actually taking too much money out of the economy now. Taking money out of the public sector may risk the recovery and throw Britain back into recession. But what he'll be saying is actually a more dynamic private sector will be Britain's road to recovery.
Ian Watson, thank you very much. The Conservatives have won the final seat in Parliament after a delayed election in the North Yorkshire seat of Thirsk and Malton. The Tory candidate, Anne McIntosh, beat her Liberal Democrat rival with a majority of more than 11,000, but said she was looking forward to working with the Lib Dems in Parliament. The Liberal Democrat MP Simon Hughes has launched his bid to become the deputy leader of the party following Vince Cable's resignation on Wednesday. Mr Hughes said he aimed to ensure the Liberal Democrats remain a supportive but independent voice in the coalition government. A British Marine killed in an explosion in Afghanistan on Wednesday has been named as 26-year-old Corporal Stephen Curley from 40 Commando Marines. Corporal Curley died whilst on foot patrol in Helmand Province. Talks are to resume today between British Airways and union bosses as the first of the 5-day strikes by cabin crew comes to an end, but the next one is due to start on Sunday. The airline says it plans to increase its flying schedule during further strikes next week because more staff than expected are choosing to work through the industrial action. While our business correspondent John Moylan is here. Do we know how badly it affected services last week?
Well, BA says that it's flying the flag, but quite clearly there has been quite a lot of disruption. These are the numbers that we do know. BA said originally that it hoped to be able to fly in terms of its long-haul and short-haul schedules around 50%, so 60% of long-haul flights and 50% of short-haul flights. Now, that's across all airports. The key, of course, is Heathrow, its biggest base. And at Heathrow, it says that it's hoping to fly about 70% of passengers that originally booked with it. But, of course, that means 30% are flying either with another carrier, are being rebooked at another time, or simply having their flights cancelled and getting a refund. Now, we've looked through their schedules over the last few days, and we've come to the conclusion that roughly about a third of departures and arrivals are being cancelled. So quite a lot of disruption, but quite clearly BA getting people away too.
Talks are resuming, but is there any chance of progress being made?
Well, fascinating. We were told talks were resuming, no sign of it yet. Neither side can confirm that it's happening, and no sign, to be honest, of momentum in all of this. I mean, there's the historic issues at play here to do with staffing levels, bringing in new people on new contracts. But of course, they've been superseded by this whole issue of the travel perks, the travel concessions, which some cabin crew had taken away from them when they went on strike. So that's muddying the waters at the moment. There's no sign that they're moving closer together on that one. And also, as I say, at this lunchtime, no sign actually that both sides are actually talking.
John Wallen, thank you very much. A postman from Cornwall has pleaded guilty to 27 child sex offences. Michael Williams from Penryn, who's 28, groomed children online through profiles he posted on social networking websites. He was caught after 2 of his victims contacted the police. John Kay reports.
Postman Michael Williams was well known and well liked in his local community. He'd lived in the small Cornish town of Penryn all his life. During his rounds, he came into contact with hundreds of young people, and some of them were among his many victims. As a 15-year-old, this girl was befriended by Williams when he was delivering post to her family home. He then pursued her over the internet. She was suspicious and rejected his advances, but she's horrified that Williams abused so many others.
Basically, I hate him. I don't even want to be honest, he can actually just rot in prison. I hate him that much. It's just, I can't believe what he's done.
Williams' victims were not just in his hometown. Alone in his flat here, he would spend hours on the internet every day, communicating with youngsters all over Britain. Often logged onto 2 computers at the same time and using 8 different aliases, he would ask boys and girls to perform sexual acts over their webcams and then film it on a video camera. His offences were wide-ranging, from grooming children online to meeting up with them and committing actual sexual abuse. Officers found well over 1,000 paedophile images and videos on his laptop featuring hundreds of different children. And that was just the start. Michael Williams would come to this beauty spot in Falmouth. He'd park his car up here and then use a video camera secretly to film young children and teenagers getting into their bathing costumes down on the beach. Michael Williams worked as a part-time taxi driver in the Falmouth area, but the police don't believe he abused any of his young passengers. He was actively involved in youth football, where he helped organise matches. His crimes have appalled the volunteers who worked alongside him.
We have worked hand in hand with the police and the FA to bring a successful conclusion to this, and I hope he rots in hell.
Exactly how many children were tricked and abused by Williams is still not known, but the police believe he was offending for 4 years before he was caught. He was finally arrested after a youngster told teachers what had been going on. John Kay, BBC News.
The time is just after 1:15. Our top story this lunchtime. Stephen Griffiths, the man charged with the murders of 3 women who worked as prostitutes in Bradford, has appeared in court. When asked his name, he replied, the crossbow cannibal.
And I'll be in Rio looking at a Brazilian export which this country is less pleased with. Its star footballers.
And in South today, crunch time for Swindon as the team heads to Wembley for their League One playoff final. And the dog grooming parlour, which is helping to clear up the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. Find out exactly how in 15 minutes.
It's 70 years since Allied troops were rescued from the beaches of Dunkirk during the Second World War. Thousands lost their lives during the evacuation, and ahead of this weekend's commemorations, our correspondent Robert Hall has been retracing some of their steps. Well, Robert joins us now from Esquelbec in northern France. Robert.
Sophie, the many visitors who are following the roads to Dunkirk this week, perhaps following their own personal stories, might be excused for missing this spot. We're just outside a little village called Esquelbec, and this afternoon British and French veterans will join the local community in remembering, of course, the miracle of the Dunkirk beaches, but also remembering one group of men who didn't make it home.
When veterans gather on this stretch of coastline tomorrow, they'll remember a story which extended far beyond the Dunkirk beaches. On the day the last ship sailed for the UK, over 100,000 British soldiers were still trapped in France, some fighting as a rearguard, others just trying to escape.
The odds were really stacked against us, but we fought on. You're not really afraid. You know it's a job to be done. But when I think of it now, I get scared thinking about it.
The men of the rearguard witnessed fierce fighting and extreme brutality. Here in the village churchyard at Esquelbec lie men killed not in combat, but whilst prisoners of war. The headstones bear the badges of the Royal Warwickshires, the Cheshires and the Royal Artillery, all of whom had managed to hold up a division of the SS for around 24 hours.
We were the main ones that stopped them from breaking through. And we got the worst end of the bargain.
Bert and around 90 other prisoners were marched to a nearby barn, their rough treatment hinting at what was to come.
Must have been 40 or 50 people in the barn. They threw grenades. I got saved because I was underneath a pile of bodies.
Lose him his arm, but he and his company commander fled along a ditch before taking cover in a small pond.
He said to me, we've got to make a run for it. But I said, well, what's use? He may try to make a run for it, but I heard a shot and he was no more.
Fewer than 20 of the men who'd been forced into the barn survived the atrocity.
It's an ordeal, and I don't wish to remember it, I wish to forget it.
11,000 dead, 40,000 prisoners, 90% of their equipment lost. And yet the courage and sacrifice of those left behind played a vital role in the miracle of Dunkirk.
Well, the barn standing in the corner was erected by local villagers to replace the original building in which that massacre took place, and they too have been behind the creation of this new memorial, not only to the British who fell, but to all those who died in battle here, and indeed to the villagers who lost their lives during that fierce campaign. A symbol of friendship and of peace for the future. Sophie.
Robert, thank you very much. Now, if you don't brush your teeth twice a day, you could increase the risk of heart disease. For the first time, researchers looked at whether the frequency of brushing had any effect on the risk of developing cardiovascular problems. Our health correspondent Jane Hughes has the story.
It's a habit we're taught from an early age. Brush your teeth twice a day to fend off decay. But there's increasing evidence that poor dental health can have more serious consequences. Researchers looked at the habits of almost 12,000 patients. 3 out of 10 said they brushed their teeth less than twice a day. And people with bad oral hygiene had a 70% greater risk of developing heart disease.
If you don't brush your teeth, you get gingivitis, swelling in your mouth, which is inflammation in the soft tissues of your mouth. The evidence suggests that circulates in your body and is then linked to other diseases such as heart disease. So the raised inflammation in your blood helps to clog up the arteries elsewhere in your body.
This study reinforces the evidence of a link between mouth hygiene and heart disease and stroke. It's increasingly clear that regular brushing isn't just important for reducing the pain when you go to the dentist, but also for your overall health. Dr. Demir Sena often finds himself having to remind his patients of the importance of regular morning and evening brushing.
Your mouth is one of the dirtiest places in your body. Huge numbers of bacteria in there, and you're just reducing those bacteria by brushing your teeth. You're just removing those bacteria. You're not letting them get into your system.
It's true that things like obesity and smoking are more likely to cause heart disease, but even so, this is a reminder of just how important it is to keep your teeth clean and healthy. Jane Hughes, BBC News.
In India, at least 65 people have been killed and hundreds injured in a train crash in West Bengal. Local police say the line was sabotaged, causing 2 trains to collide. Humphrey Hawksley reports.
The blue train, packed for the holiday season, was travelling at night through this remote part of eastern India. Survivors say they heard a loud thud. Then the carriages were thrown off the rail and smashed into a goods train coming in the opposite direction. We were asleep when we heard the crash, he says. There was a jerk and we fell off our seats. There was smoke all around. We managed to get out through the emergency door. It took more than 3 hours for rescue workers to even get to the site. The carriages were so crushed that they're still working to free those trapped inside. Helicopters have been ferrying the injured to hospital. The police are convinced that the track was sabotaged by Maoist insurgents, a movement that's becoming increasingly active in large swathes of India. They claim to represent millions of poor villagers cut off from India's prosperity, and they've warned that today is the start of a black week of action. Victims of the crash have been offered compensation, and trains driving through Maoist areas have been told to go slowly so that crews can watch out for further attacks. Humphrey Hawksley, BBC News.
Now, they've won the World Cup more times than any other nation and produced some of the world's best footballers. In just 4 years' time, Brazil, the economic powerhouse of South America, will be hosting the tournament. But the domestic game has long been rife with corruption, forcing many of Brazil's best players abroad. So could things be about to change? Well, the BBC's Matt Fry is in Rio now. Matt.
Sophie, I'm actually standing in front of Ipanema Beach, and in about 4 years' time, this place will be full of football fans, many of them probably nursing a few hangovers. The point is this country needs to get ready for prime time. In 4 years, they have the World Cup. Just 2 years later, they have the Olympic Games. And the fact that the economy here is expanding will no doubt help. But what many Brazilians really hope is that this will also stop the talent drain of footballers. In Brazil, they're getting ready for the World Cup. No, not the one in South Africa, the one they're hosting here in 2014. This is the Morumbi Stadium in Sao Paulo. They're expanding it to 68,000 seats, and they're hoping that this place will host the opening game. But there's an awful lot of work before it's up to scratch. Here they're putting in the VIP boxes required by FIFA. The clock is ticking, and Brazil has discovered that in order to be a successful World Cup host and a great footballing nation, you need more than just talent and enthusiasm. No shortage of that, of course. There's hardly a flat surface in Brazil that doesn't get turned into a pitch for barefoot Beckhams, dreaming of their escape from the favelas. The only pair of shoes here is used to make a goal. Today, the boy in blue and purple shorts is pretending to be Robinho, a local hero who also played barefoot once, but now wears the fancy footwear of a superstar, and like so many players, has pursued his fortunes abroad. The talent drain of Brazilian footballers had reached epidemic proportions. Just ask the fans. We went to the Maracanã Stadium in Rio to see Flamengo play, the team with the biggest fan base in Brazil. What these fans here lament is that the very best players, having learned their trade in the favelas of places like Rio or Sao Paulo, then go abroad to Europe, attracted by the money and the glamour of clubs there. So here's the question. Can the improving economy of Brazil lure those players back home? The Costa family, all of them festooned in the team's colours, certainly hope so.
Companies have invested a lot, so it's a good opportunity for Brazilian players to come back for similar salaries to Europe.
Robinho is a case in point. He's on his way to the World Cup in South Africa, and you may have seen him play for Manchester City. But these days, he's practicing with Pelé's former team, Santos. The prodigal son has returned home, for now at least. Here he is fooling around with Neymar, the new boy to watch in Brazil. He's also decided to stay at home and forego the dreams of success in Europe. They're both part of a new but still rare breed, Brazilian football stars who play in Brazil. Of course, there are still huge challenges left here, the most important being the extraordinary discrepancy between rich and poor, even here in Ipanema. But if they can solve that problem, and if the economy continues to grow, then expect to see Brazil playing a much more robust role on the world stage. This could be its decade.
Matt Fry, thank you very much. Well, from football to cricket, and it's been a good morning for England against Bangladesh on day 2 of the first test at Lord's. At lunch, England were 456 for 6, with Jonathan Trott hitting a double century. Here's Andy Swiss.
A bright morning at Lord's and equally bright prospects for England. They resumed on a commanding 362 for 4, but Bangladesh struck first. Debutant Owen Morgan gone for 44, a sorely needed breakthrough for the tourists. Still, they couldn't dislodge Jonathan Trott though. 175 not out overnight, he continued to frustrate the bowlers. But England were themselves getting frustrated, and the hapless run out of Matt Pryor for just 16 summed up their scrappy start. It was up to Trott to lift the mood, and he did precisely that. Trott cantering to his double century to his and the crowd's delight. Only the 7th England batsman ever to score 200 in a Lord's test. England haven't been as fluent as they'd like,
But Tim Bresnan is adding valuable runs, and of course Trott is still there. On 217 at lunch, a triple century now beckons. Andy Swiss, BBC News.
And finally the weather, the all-important bank holiday forecast with Matt Taylor.
Thank you very much, Sophie. One thing for sure, it's not going to be quite as hot as it was last weekend, where we got very close to the dizzy heights of 29 Celsius, a much more comfortable 20 degrees at best through this weekend. But regardless of the temperature, don't forget the sunshine just as strong. And that's the case through today, with most of us seeing some long spells of sunshine through the afternoon. Up to around 19 in London, great for the cricketers and for those at the Chelsea Flower Show. Dry and bright for many. But with the winds coming off the English Channel, meeting a westerly flow where they meet just inland from the coast, we could just see one or two heavy showers brew through the afternoon. Most, however, should stay dry with varying amounts of sunshine. Good deal of sunshine and dry weather across Wales and into the northwest, although there will be that cool breeze coming in off the Irish Sea. For Northern Ireland, a lighter breeze to talk of here. Fewer showers than yesterday. There'll still be a scattering of them around, but not quite as heavy. Many will still see glimpses of the sunshine. But the northwest of Scotland, the sunshine harder to find. The Western Isles into parts of Caithness and Sutherland, cloudy and turning wet through the afternoon. Brighter to the south and east of Scotland with fewer showers than yesterday, and certainly a bright afternoon across much of northern England and the Midlands, with temperatures quite happily into the mid or high teens. Now through this coming night, most of us will start the night dry, and it will turn a little bit chilly, eastern Scotland and eastern England in particular. But later, temperatures will rise as cloud spills in from the southwest. Northern Ireland will turn wet not long after midnight, and by daybreak on Saturday, raining across much of Wales and western England, where temperatures will be up to around 11 degrees to start your Saturday morning. So this is the wet stage of the bank holiday weekend. We should all see rain at some point through the day. Initially in Northern Ireland, western England and Wales, it will spread its way northwards and eastwards into southern Scotland for the afternoon. Brighter skies will follow for the afternoon across the southwest and through Wales with one or two showers, those pushing into the Midlands. But it will remain rather cloudy, cool and damp across northern England and southeast Scotland throughout the day. In the brightness, temperatures at best 16 or 17 degrees. A little bit dry, a little bit brighter for Sunday, exception being eastern parts of Scotland and northeast England, where there'll be a cold and strong breeze. But most of us will see the sunshine through the day, and indeed in the sunshine it should feel pleasant enough at around 16 to 18 Celsius. Your bank holiday Monday, a bright start, a cold start with some sunshine around, bit of cloud building up through the day, perhaps the southwest a bit cloudier and damper than most. Most of them will be dry with a high of 20. So a wet start to the weekend, the sunshine eventually coming out for most of us. Enjoy your weekend. Back to you, Sophie.
Matt, thank you very much. At 1:30, a reminder of our top stories. Stephen Griffiths, the man charged with the murders of 3 women who worked as prostitutes in Bradford, has appeared in court. When asked his name, he replied, the crossbow cannibal. News at 1 this lunchtime. Now it's time to join the BBC's news teams where you are. Enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye.